to share and go.
Live streaming started, sir.
Yeah. Balraman, shall we start?
Please do.
Very good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Once again, it's indeed my proud privilege to welcome each one of you another edition of our Pons Veteran series this evening. I'll warmly welcome all the viewers watching this program live on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, our own streaming, and also MMA radio. I'm quite sure, sit back, and you're going to have a feast of a time this evening. And as usual, if you have any questions, please do send it by WhatsApp to our number, what's splashed on the screen. Those who are watching the program live on our Zoom, please type your questions and also share your questions so that the speakers are really happy to health and fitness, which one cares for that. Another difference this evening is the moderator for the session is Professor Gautam Ahuja, who has joined us from Cornell University, USA. And Professor Nandkishore and Mr. Pandit will share their personal experience of how they take care of the health and include fitness in every day's life, including professional life. All the speakers are already known to you very well, and briefly, I'm quite sure Chairman will views. Their detailed profile has already been included in the invitation which has been shared with you. And I also want to give a word of caution. Before that, I also want to share with you, as a fitness freak, being in armed forces, what we've been taught in the Air Force Academy, all through the regime of our training as far as medical fitness is, that you love your body, the body will love you. And another caution we want to share with you before I'll request Mr. Balraman to introduce the theme and the content, that the speakers are sharing their personal experience. For every individual's health and fitness will have a different connotation for each one of them. So health and fitness practices need to be personalized for safety. So we advise that no one should simply copy and follow what worked for them. They should take medical advice before they initiating into something new, which they listen to the speaker this evening, which they would like to follow. Now, coming to today's thing, and it's my proud privilege to briefly welcome all the distinguished speakers. And Mr. Balraman is past president of MMA and is also MBA from IIM Ahmedabad, from India Pons, and you all know him as personally my mentor, well-wisher of MMA. We are able to turn around on many areas for functioning and what he's showcasing in terms of management program. Mr. Balraman has been the one who is showing us the way forward to do that. And I will request Mr. Balraman to offer his introductory remarks. Over to you, Mr. Balraman.
Thank you, Vijay. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. A professional career, an executive career nowadays is something that everybody would like to have. It's everyone's ambition, and to get a career opportunity in a very large global corporation, be it of Indian origin or of international origin, is seen as the ultimate goal and gain for every young man and woman. There is a lot of glamour attached to this. The glamour is that of very high pay with all the facilities and perquisites, international travel, international assignments, and very reputable designations and societal admiration. And if you are not married, an excellent marriage possibility. So a professional career as an executive is what everyone likes to have. And once you get it, it's also a trap of which you are not aware of which you are not aware. The glamour is obvious and evident. The positives are very clear. But what happens is that once you start into an executive career, it is you develop a passion. You develop a passion, and a passion for achieving more and more. It never stops. Whatever is your level of achievement, it is never enough for you because there is always more to do. And that is a golden handcuff that links you to success. Now, what is wrong with that? I mean, more success cannot be wrong, right? What is wrong is that your passion ties you to your job. And then you can never give enough time to a job. No matter how much time you give in a day or in a week or in a month or in a year, it is not enough. There is always a lot more to do, and you can always do better, and there are always challenges. So, in this, what most executives do in getting attached so much to the job, they forget everything else about their life. Work-life balance is one thing that everyone in India, most people in India, except the very recent youngsters that I see, like my children, most executives sacrifice life for work. They also sacrifice their health, they sacrifice nutrition, they sacrifice rest, and what they do not, what they don't not cognizant of is there is a constant adrenaline rush. There is constant stress, and stress is a silent killer. Stress is something that we are not aware of as being harmful to us. Any problem, any challenge stimulates you, and that stimulation produces adrenaline, noradrenaline, and cortisol. Three hormones that shut down normal repair that body and mind do to themselves. All your energies are diverted to thinking about the problem and finding solutions. Many of you would be lying awake for hours in the night until you find an appropriate solution that satisfies you. You lose sleep. Now, it is during sleep that your body repairs itself. You're, if you are lying awake all night and all your energies are diverted to your brain trying to find a solution, your pulse rate is kept high. And what happens is all nutrition is diverted to the brain on not to repairing your cells that have everyday wear and tear. You develop what I would call you would look like a pregnant woman. I mean, like I did in my 35 to 45 years of age. And that is when the problem starts, because the around the belly is the one that causes high blood pressure and causes diabetes. Laying the foundation, group captain, that is laying the foundation for your heart problems. Now, so stress is a major killer. It's a silent killer. Stress is something you are not aware of. And we therefore thought that, we should talk to you about whether that is the only way you manage your career, and is that the only way you manage your life. No, say my three colleagues who are handling today's webinar. The idea came from Gautam, who is in Cornell, and we owe it to him. He felt very strongly that we should talk about health and fitness for executives. And I'm happy to say that Nandkishore is some kind of a practicing expert, as is Pandit. Each one of them have their own angle to personal health and fitness. They'll talk to you about physical fitness, emotional fitness, mental fitness, rest, relaxation, avoiding stress. So on to you, Gautam.
Thank you, Mr. Balaram, sir. Folks, I will just quickly share screen on a very, very brief introductory sort of presentation. Basically, I hope it's visible. Is it visible now?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
You can go to slide slow, sir.
Sure.
It's quite clear, full screen. Thank you.
Thank you. So very briefly, first of all, I'd like to touch upon a little bit upon the background of the individuals that we are, about the agenda, and then I'll go to the background of the individual. So first thing is, as Mr. Balraman very appropriately put it, life can be very stressful. A management career can be particularly hard. And the chemicals that he mentioned, they are critical to life, but they're also extremely, stress inducing and so on. And at the same time, the routines of executive life make maintaining regular habits very difficult, of good health habits difficult. And so our main objective today is inspiration, right? There are two objectives we have today: inspiration and information. Inspiration is the main thing, because what we do know is that sometimes we need a push, something to get us doing something. So I don't think that, none of us here are experts on health and fitness. That is not who we are. There are trained, certified people who do that, and no, none of us are that. So we are not the people who will tell you do this or don't do that. What we're doing here is bringing together a group of people who have been very successful in their management careers. So in that sense, they are role models, but they have also been very successful in another part of their life, which you do not see in their CV, which is their allegiance and, performing of routines, which are very, very good for them. And similar routines would be good for you also in terms of addressing things like diet, stress, and nutrition, which are the key components and the key components of a very healthy lifestyle. And so our goal here is, let's try and break the inertia of doing nothing. Now that COVID is hopefully on some sort of balancing trajectory, let's make sure that we are thinking very hard about our own health, and we are taking charge of it, which we'll talk about a little bit later. Okay, so that's the first part: inspiration and motivation. The second part is information. These are three different perspectives presented by three very different and accomplished individuals. They present a variety of ideas. Each one of them has found a way to weave the ideas they present into a holistic lifestyle. And I think that's an important thing for you to take away from this talk, is that whatever you do, it's rarely the case that one single activity is by itself independent from everything else you do. You have to build a lifestyle around these activities. And that's the reason that's what makes the inspiration part even more important, is that it's difficult to build a lifestyle, or even more difficult to change one, right? So they're presenting a variety of ideas. You should be, reviewing these ideas, but building a sort of inventory of these ideas, and then seeing what works for you. And that is what you have to take to somebody that is a certified medical professional and say, okay, I'm planning to make these changes in my life, given my particular health. Does that make sense? So I'm again re-emphasizing that this is really about each individual's unique health situation. The common thing that I do want to emphasize is that medical professionals everywhere in the world are stressed because of COVID, but even otherwise, they have a lot of work, which means our health is our responsibility primarily. We're the ones that have to drive it. And very often what is very heartbreaking is to see things happening to people which could have been avoided, but people relied upon, and these are very accomplished people that I have in mind, who relied upon purely saying, well, my doctor didn't tell me to do this. Well, your doctor's got a lot of things to do. Your health is your responsibility. That is one of the messages we want to convey. We will be monitoring the chat. Please feel free to ask questions through that. And we will also have a separate question and answer session. Ideally, we'll take a few questions after each speaker, and then towards the end, we will, ask questions of the panel as a whole. So if your questions are specific to a speaker, you can put them into the chat, and we can sort of erase them. Okay. Now quickly to introduce our three speakers. You already know Mr. Balraman very well. Like all the others on this chat today, he is both an alum from IIM Ahmedabad and a Ponds alum as well. His corporate career, well. He was, the managing director of Ponds, and then, in various level positions at Hindustan Lever and a bunch of other companies. But he will today focus on the things you don't know. He will talk a little, about his own health journey. And I think that is a very important complement to what we have here. Here's a man who has managed his life in two different domains very, very well. That's one thing. So welcome, Mr. Balraman. Our second speaker, and this is not in order of speaking, we will actually go in a sort of reverse order. is Mr. Pandit, and Mr. Pandit again is an IIM Ahmedabad graduate, an alum of Ponds India, and has worked in a variety of corporate sort of roles. Again, founder, CEO, many achievements. Again, something that I did not know when I sort of worked with him, but I was not surprised at all to learn, given how disciplined he is in his life, that he has a very interesting rhythm that he has built to his life. And again, something that is very useful for us to kind of take away in terms of how has he managed to weave all these achievements along with the health perspective that he's put together. And third, and who will be our, we'll be speaking in this order, in the reverse order. So our first speaker also is Mr. Nandu Nandkishore, who is currently a professor at the Indian School of Business. Also, I believe he is the past and again CEO of Nestle Nutrition. And so he has built an incredibly successful career over the last 30 years. And he actually has direct expertise on nutrition, so to speak. He's also been working as a professor now, following his retirement from Nestle. But he again will give you a very balanced sort of perspective, focusing a lot on nutrition, but also talking about the big picture. So with that, I will stop and stop sharing, and I invite, welcome aboard our three speakers, and invite Nandu to take over and start off. Nandu.
Thank you, Gautam, and thank you, Mr. Balraman. Thank you, Group Captain Vijay, for that introduction and welcome. And good evening to all of you. I suppose most of you are in India. To introduce myself, thank you, Gautam, for that introduction. I'll just add to it to say, listen, I'm at this point of time, 62 years of age. I've worked for 40 years. And after retirement, I now teach at London Business School, the Indian School of Business. I'm a venture capitalist and a consultant and on some boards. I also have, so some of the stuff that I talk about and other stuff, I have a YouTube channel. It's called Insights with Nandu. So do go to YouTube and search for Insights with Nandu. You might find interesting content over there, short videos, 10, 15 minutes on various topics, including stress management and fitness and so on. So what I'm going to do is talk for about 15 to 20 minutes. It's part of a longer session that I teach at business school, which is called Managing Your Life and Career. Now that is actually, it's 2 sessions of 1.5 hours each. So it's a 3-hour session. And I'm trying to compress some salient parts of that into 15 to 20 minutes. So bear with me. You can always, if you have questions, we can come back and refer to the questions. Again, I re-emphasize something both Mr. Balraman and Gautam said, which is while I share with you my personal insights and I share with you my insights are informed by my time as the global CEO for Nestle Nutrition and 30 years with Nestle, which is a nutrition company, but I am not giving you medical advice. Before you make any changes in your lifestyle, please do consult your doctor. These are just information and tips. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by sharing a whiteboard and then one particular slide, then I'll go back to the whiteboard. And let me note my time so I know how much time I have. Okay, got it. So let's get started. So for most people, life follows a pattern, something like this. If we, beg your pardon, let me just repeat that and draw it again. So people are born somewhere here. And they're conceived at minus 270 days. And there's a period of rapid growth continuing after that into adulthood, then they decline and eventually they fall off the cliff. So roughly this, if you look at it, there are several parts you can divide this into. It's the first 1,000 days of life, then a continued 5,000 days of growth, then 10,000 days as a young adult, 10,000 days of middle age, and 10,000 days of old age. That adds up to a hypothetical 36,500 days. Many people actually follow a suboptimal curve and they fall off the cliff somewhere here. And that's India, where typically people fall off the cliff on average at about 26,500 days of life. Now, let me go to the same chart in a more sophisticated PowerPoint chart, which has drawn this out quite nicely. And I'll talk a few concepts coming from there. So my screen sharing should be starting now. Can you see my screen?
Yeah, we can see.
Yes.
Okay, so this is the same chart, and you have the first 1,000 days. And indeed, most people don't realize that at age of 2, you have already reached 50% of your adult height, right? And then you have the 5,000 days of growth. After that, 10,000 days as a young adult, 10,000 days of middle age, and 10,000 days of old age. Most people are on a red suboptimal curve and they fall off the cliff somewhere here. So what makes the difference whether you're on this curve or on this curve? What is the difference? Of course, the earlier you can start on the curve, the better. If you can start off here and get on the right curve, that's better. For most of us, we're talking of a corporate executives, we are somewhere here in this phase of our lives. In this phase of our lives, you can't go back and correct the past. All you can make sure is that your curve flattens from here onwards so that you de facto enter a healthier and longer lasting lifestyle, and thereby not only extend life, but also extend healthy life. That's the first point, that you can't change the past. You can't change the past. What you can change is the future. The second big insight and learning here is, for most people, if you the last 1,000 days of life, the last 1,000 days of life are actually 50% of your total healthcare costs throughout life. And this can be very stressful for family, for friends, for well-wishers, particularly if this decline is long and painful. And so this can be a very painful time. So, you know, all the people I talk to me about, and they say, you know, I really care for my family, but what can I do? Work demands so much time of me. So just a perspective on this, if you really cared for your family, you would not put them through this hell that happens when you decline like that. You would do everything you can to flatten your curve from here onwards so that when you go, you can go with as little pain for them and for you as possible. That's the first thing. The second insight is on career management is this, which is, a lot of people actually, so one of the most important things, and it's something I tell my students, MBA students graduating, that the biggest key to career success is stay alive and stay healthy. Because if you would die of a heart attack at the age of 45, it's unlikely you'll have a successful career except as a zombie in the movie made by Hollywood, right? Likewise, you know, if you have a serious health condition at the age of 45, it's unlikely that you will have a successful career there onwards. You might yourself decide to take a slower pace of life from there onwards. So the secret to actually living a healthier life is the attitude. It starts in there. And you start really to build, to flatten your curve from middle age onwards so you don't decline at the same pace. Now, what are the elements that drive this? What will I talk about? What will Mr. Pandit talk about? And eventually Mr. Balraman will round off all of what we say. So here's, I'm going to share again my whiteboard. And this is an awkward angle I'm writing at, so bear with the handwriting. So what determines which curve you are on? Well, the first thing obviously is genetics. This I will not talk about today. The second thing is something called epigenetics. And epigenetics is basically the science of how the environment around you, particularly early on in life, but even otherwise, affects the expression of your genetics. So epi, literally the Greek, is on top of genetics. It affects the expression of your genetics. I won't talk about this much today, just practically to say that your particular individual body was designed by the lifestyle of your ancestors over the last several generations. So you have to understand what is the lifestyle they had, which triggered the epigenetic switches. So some of your genes got switched on, some of your genes got switched off. So if you deviate too much from their lifestyle, you are actually asking your body to take on a lifestyle and stresses that it is not prepared for. That's all I'll say about epigenetics today. I won't talk in more detail about epigenetics. The third thing to be aware of is your second genome. And second genome is what is called microbiome. That is the bacteria inside you. It turns out every one of us has an individual bacterial fingerprint. Again, I will not focus on this today. I will focus on the fourth thing, which is the lifestyle, and which is easier to manage. I'll come to that in a minute. Microbiome, just one word, our inside our bodies, in the gut area particularly, we have thousands of species of bacteria. Some are good guys, some are bad guys, some are both good and bad. Some we don't know what they're doing there, but they're there. But it's a complex ecosystem. Every one of you has an individual fingerprint, that is a bacterial fingerprint. When that bacterial fingerprint goes out of whack, people fall ill. There is a very strong correlation, and this correlative data, this is not causal, there's research coming out on this even now, of a reduced diversity of gut microbiome with diseases like Alzheimer's and Parkinson's and even coronary heart disease. So there's all kinds of intricate linkages which seem to imply that managing our second genome, our microbiome, may be key part of managing our health. What can you do? Well, you can eat food for good bacteria, lots of fiber, so plant-based foods. You can also eat food which are with good bacteria. So good bacteria, things like yogurt, dahi, fermented foods, not fermented alcohol, fermented foods, dokla, dahi, kimchi, sauerkraut, soya, etc., fermented soya like tempeh, tau, etc. That's all I'll talk about on the microbiome for now. In the interest of time, I'm going to focus a lot of my talking on lifestyle. And I have about 13 minutes still to talk on lifestyle. So lifestyle, several elements you can talk about. First, you can talk about exercise. I will not talk at length about exercise because Mr. Pandit will talk about that at more detail. Exercise for the body. I will talk a little bit about exercise for the mind. There's also diet, and I'll talk a little bit about, there are several areas you can say. There's what, there is the when you should eat, and there's the how you should eat. I'll talk a little bit about the when. The what everybody talks about, so you are experts on it. I will not repeat that. And there is sleep, which Mr. Balraman spoke about. I'll just touch upon sleep very, very briefly. There's hydration. Most of us should drink between 2 to 3 liters of water per day or more, depending on your environment. Most of us do not drink that much water. So we tend to be chronically dehydrated. And lastly, stress management. So I will focus my talk a little bit on the mind, on the when you should eat, and on the stress management. One word on sleep to round off what Mr. Balraman said earlier. The amount of sleep we require as individuals varies throughout life. For a newborn, it's 20 hours per day. For most people in their teens, it's supposed to be 10 hours per day with individual differences. And for most adults in the middle ages, it's about 8 hours per day. There is research, fascinating research coming out that seems to indicate that when you are in deep sleep, the spinal fluid is actually pumped into your brain to clean the brain of all the detritus it has acquired during the day, because the brain also has to cleanse itself of dead brain cells and stuff like that. So most of us, we are chronically sleep deprived and we are chronically dehydrated. So these are things that are very much in your control, and it all starts with an attitude. If you care for your family, find time to take care of this. Otherwise, you'll basically be putting stress on them in the last 1,000 days of your life, whatever that life is. So let's talk about exercise for the mind, talk about the diet, and talk about stress management. Exercise for the mind. The principles are actually very similar to that for the body. And the principle is as any muscle. It's simple, it's use it or lose it. So as Mr. Pandit will say to you on exercise for the body, exercise matters. But if you keep doing the same exercise over and over again, the body gets used to it and doesn't actually build fresh muscle. To build fresh muscle or new muscle, you have to shock the body with a different kind of exercise. It's the same with the brain. If you are fond of doing crossword puzzles and you keep doing crossword puzzles, your body is not building any new brain connections, any new neuronal connections in the brain. So the way to do that is to trick the brain by doing unfamiliar activity. What is unfamiliar activities? For example, if you write with your right hand, try writing with your left hand. You'll absolutely suck at it. You'll hate it, but you will build new brain cells. If you are a Hindi speaker, learn Tamil. You will suck at it. You will hate it because it's a completely different family of languages, but you will build new brain connections. If you're a Tamil speaker, learn Chinese. Again, the same logic applies. Do unfamiliar activities, and that's how you actually build brain connections. Going back to what we talked about, and there is also seems to be a connection between exercise for the body. Healthy body actually contributes to a healthy brain and a healthy mind. There's also a synergistic circular loop that happens here both ways. Now, let me talk about diet and then about stress. So on the diet, the thing to be aware of is what we call our basal metabolic rate. The basal metabolic rate is the rate at which you burn calories even when you are sleeping. Now, there is some evidence that shows that this basal metabolic rate starts to rise at about 6 a.m. when there is natural daylight, and there is 6 p.m. here. So it rises up through to midday, then actually declines. So you wake up here because the BMR is rising. You fall asleep here because the BMR is declining. Now you remember what I talked to you about the epigenetic impact of your body and machinery that was designed by the lifestyle of your ancestors. Your ancestors basically ate in this 12-hour window. They did not eat outside of this 12-hour window. So your body is used to fasting from 12 to 14 hours per day. Yeah. So your body is used to fasting from 12 to 14 hours per day. This is normally what your body is designed for. So, beg your pardon, it's the other chart. Where did I go? I seem to have missed that chart. So the basal metabolic chart, rate chart, where I said it goes out like that from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. So the biggest meals of your day should be when the basal metabolic rhythm is rising or when it is high. Your smallest meal of the day should be when it is low. For most of us working, we tend to make the meal about 8 p.m. our biggest meal of the day. If you do that, basically you're asking for cardiovascular disease, hypertension, diabetes, etc., because you're eating food when you are not, your body is not designed to eat food. So the whole science of, in fact, intermittent fasting basically says fast for 12 to 14 hours per day. And every once in a while, you extend the fast to 24 hours. Yeah, in Islam, there's Ramadan. Yeah, in Catholicism, there's Lent. In Hinduism, there's the fast every Ekadashi for 24 hours. And this is the whole science of intermittent fasting. And some people extend this intermittent fasting all the way to 18 hours or 20 hours. That's a lot of experimentation and consultation with your doctor as to what works for you. But that is the whole science of intermittent fasting. Done scientifically, done under medical supervision, it can be a very good complement to exercise. Exercise taken together with intermittent fasting is actually magic in managing all your health parameters. Fine. So let me look at the time. I have 5 minutes left to speak. So let me close this and talk about stress management. Stress is part of life. If you're working, you're going to have stress. Now, as Mr. Balraban referred to this earlier, a small amount of stress is actually good for us. The body produces adrenaline, produces cortisol, and these are all designed to trigger the fight or flee response or the strength to fight an enemy that comes. And this was an essential survival reflex going back to our earlier ancestral days. Today, however, when we are under chronic stress for a long period of time, then the levels of adrenaline and cortisol stay elevated for a long, prolonged period of time. And that results in the narrowing of the arteries and the hardening of the arteries, which is also a contributing factor to the cardiovascular disease and related stuff. So to understand the hormonal impact, then it's also possible to fight it at the hormonal level. So two things here. One, what are the good hormones? Endorphins, which your body produces, natural painkillers your body produces when you exercise. So the more you exercise, the endorphins come in and they actually de-stress your body. One. Second, oxytocin. Oxytocin, also called as the cuddle hormone, is the hormone that you get from being with people, touching people, just a fraternal arm around the shoulder of a friend, holding babies, playing with dogs. All of this release, and oxytocin dilates the blood vessels and counteracts the effects of cortisol. So it's two very important hormones entirely in your control to deal with stress: endorphins and oxytocins. You can control both. Through oxytocins, you build a rich web of social relationships. And touch, not in an improper or sexually charged sense, just platonic. Just touching people seems to release a lot of positive hormones in our bodies. Last point on stress, and this is very interesting. If you haven't already seen a video, I would refer you to YouTube to go and look for a TED talk by Kelly McGonigal. And Kelly McGonigal, wonderful TED talk, and she talks about stress and some interesting new learning that's coming out about stress. And what this learning seems to imply is that how your body responds to stress seems to be a function of your attitude towards stress. If you perceive stress to be something negative, and you look at it as something that, oh my God, stressed, what do I do? It's so difficult. Chances are your body will react negatively to it. But if you perceive stress as something positive that you can take on board and you actually use it to leverage and improve performance, then it seems your body actually adapts and even benefits from that. I recall a conversation about 20 years ago. I was having a conversation, a little more than 20 years, 25 years ago, with my boss in Indonesia. And his name was Stefan Eisenman. And it was very stressful in those days. It was the ASEAN financial crisis, 1998. And I remember talking to him and say, Eisenman, really, this is a very stressful period. So very wise man. He looked at me over his glasses and said, but Nandu, I've observed you closely. And I think you're one of those people who actually thrives on stress. And you know what? He was right, because when I look back, I felt the stress, but often those periods of stress somehow were periods where I was able to actually deliver learning for myself and results for the organization that kind of were in some way probably even triggered by the stress. But I did have the good habits of endorphins and oxytocin. I was exercising every day. Lunchtime, I used to go off and exercise, and be endorphins and oxytocin, because we had young kids at home, and there's nothing like no bigger de-stressor than going back and actually just roughhousing with your children. How you deal with stress can be a very important part of managing your life and your career. I've spoken for 20 minutes, Gautam, so I better shut up now, and we can take more in the Q&A. Let me hand over to you.
Sure. Thank you, Nandu. This was fascinating. I think we could have had you just carry on talking for a long time, but let me take a break here and ask. I don't see any questions in the chat, and if somebody has a question, please feel free to raise your hand or think about a question and put it on the chat. And in the meanwhile, what I'll do is I'll ask Nandu a question myself, which might be top of mind for many people, which is that Nandu, all the practices and all the logic you provided was absolutely fascinating. A big problem, however, is that people find it difficult to change their behavior and to stick with new behavior. So do you have some advice on how, what are some of the things you do to manage your discipline? Like you say, you always exercise in the middle of the afternoon, even when you were working very busily, you presumably manage your diet and stress accordingly. So if you have some, insights on how we can inspire or motivate ourselves to make those changes, whether we make the changes you're talking about or some other changes that a doctor, is mentioning to us, I think part of it is that self-discipline. So any advice you have on that?
Yeah, a couple of pieces, and it's all to do with attitude and an understanding. Look, no matter how successful your career, the day you step out of your career, you will be forgotten. The king is dead, long live the king. So you may be Mr. Vice President, Ms. CEO, most brilliant person. Everybody says, wow, you're so great. The day you step out, those same people will not look at you a second time. And there will be others around you who were, for whatever reason, envious of your success, who will then look at you very differently and in fact go out of their way to treat you to put you down if they can. At such times, remember, who stands by you is your family and your true friends. Okay? So your job doesn't stand by you the day you step out of the job. But the people who will stand by you are your family and your true friends. So that's the first observation. Now, then you say, when in my last 1,000 days of life, my last 10,000 days of life. And a career is a marathon, it's not a sprint. Life is a marathon, it's not a sprint. In that last 10,000 days of life, who's going to stand by you? Is it your career? Is it your business? Is your Mr. Vice President status? Or is it the family and friends that you have? And if they're the ones who are going to stand by you and you expect them to stand by you, then in the 10,000 days preceding the last 10,000 days, in those 10,000 days, treat them as if they matter. And the way you treat them as if they matter is by looking after yourself, to make sure that you don't put them under pain in the last 1,000 days. So change your habits, because when people say, I really care for my family, and they still work these terrible hours and eat at the wrong times and don't exercise, I basically have to say, listen, don't give me that bullshit. You don't care for your family. All you care about is your career. Okay? If you cared for your family, then you will step off and you will make time for exercise. You will make time for healthy habits. It takes effort. 2 tips here. 1, you do it for 3 weeks and it will become very much part of your new lifestyle. So discipline for 3 weeks and then it becomes part of a routine, whether it's sleep, whether it's exercise, whether it's intermittent fasting. And the second important tip, careful who you associate with. we all are the average of the 7 people we most spend time with. So if you, in your work life, can find a group of people who are similarly health and wellness oriented, you will find that you will all reinforce each other. If you just hang out and spend most of your time with people who love to politic, who love to drink a lot, who love to eat late and have cardiovascular disease, well, you'll be the average of that. So that's Gautam, a bit of what I had to say on this.
That's very, very insightful and helpful, because I think, forget about everybody else. I know I can take that advice to heart, and it makes a difference to me. I still don't see a question elsewhere, but I have one more question, which is a lot of people have, this conception. You touched upon sleep, but I want to go a little bit deeper into it. And you can correct me. My understanding is that there is a fair amount of research which shows that even in your mature years, you need between 7 and 9 hours of sleep on a regular basis, right? And one of the things that I've learned through that research is that a lot more people think they need less than actually need less. There is probably some very small proportion of people in the world that can do with less sleep than that, but the number of people that believe they don't need it is very, very high. And that's one problem. And the other problem is that often people have difficulty getting to sleep. So any advice on, any validation or invalidation of what my first observation, and what you would recommend and advise?
It's related to stress. Problems of getting to sleep are often related to stress. So good stress management techniques like exercise or, endorphins or oxytocin release actually help you in getting to sleep. Having a drink is not the best way to get to sleep, because that makes for short lasting and not restful sleep, in my experience. So the solutions are very much related to stress management. I do agree, most people in our society are sleep deprived. And be aware of that, do something. I see there's a question in the chat box, so allow me to say something, Gautam, on that. I have not talked about the what part of the diet, because there's so much advice out there. Yeah. So paleo diet, is it good? Is it bad? Stuff like that. I'm not going to go into that. I've only talked about the when you should eat. On the what, just one piece of advice I will give you is your body machinery was designed by the dietary patterns of your great-grandparents and great-great-grandparents. So the closer you stick to the what they ate, the better chance you have to actually stay healthy. What they ate and when they ate, that is the epigenetic influence that has come through to our body. I think we can take questions maybe later. Is that what? At the end. And let's listen to Mr. Pandit. Maybe he'll answer a lot of the questions as well automatically. Then we can come back and together try to take all the questions. Is that okay, Gautam?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you very much. Mr. Pandit, floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Gautam. Thanks to Mr. Balraman, Group Captain Vijay Kumar and MMA for giving me this opportunity to speak at MMA. And thank you very much for everyone who has logged in to this talk. Let me see if I can share my screen and my slide deck. Okay, can everybody see this slide deck?
Yes.
Let me go to the presentation mode. Okay, thank you. As both Gautam and Mr. Nandkishore said, before embarking on any fitness or health program, including exercise, diet, supplementation, etc., you should consult your doctor or healthcare provider. Okay, it was in 1979. I was in Chennai and browsing through a bookshop called Higginbotham's on Mount Road. I don't know if that bookshop is still there. Those were the days of no internet, not even good TV, no smartphones, no Google. So most of our time was spent in browsing books at bookshops. So I was going through bookshop in Higginbotham's in Mount Road, and I came across this book. It caught my attention. This book was published in 1976, and it had just come out as a paperback around that time. And as you can see from the dog-eared book, I have preserved it even till now. This was written by Lawrence Morehouse, PhD. He used to head the Human Performance Laboratory in UCLA. And his team worked on the fitness regime for NASA astronauts. As you know, these astronauts spend a lot of time in cramped environment, in the space capsules, on their long journey to space, or even while training on Earth, on the ground. So his team had developed a program which in a short period of time could keep these astronauts at their peak fitness levels. Then Professor Lawrence Morehouse had generalized it for the common man, for the common person, and he wrote this book. And as he says, all it takes is 30 minutes a week. Now, since then, I've been following a lot on fitness and a lot of literature and doing a lot of reading. It's been one of my areas of passion. But the fundamentals that Lawrence Morehouse has talked about in this book are valid even to this day. There have been improvements, but the foundations that he laid down in those days are still valid. So in my talk, I'm going to build some of those and also bring in some of the latest developments. But this book inspired me a lot. It's out of print now. If you happen to get it, my strong recommendation is please get a copy and read the book. Now, one of the first things we need to talk about or understand is fit for what? What is your fitness goal? Is it to look like Hrithik Roshan's body? Is it to be a sports person like Novak Djokovic, sumo wrestler? Most of us on this call are professionals, managers, executives, maybe entrepreneurs. Most of us, or many of us, spend 10 to 12 hours a day at our desk in our work life. So the concept of fitness for us is that we should be free of illness, be healthy. And after a strenuous work day, when we go back home, we should have the energy to spend quality time with our families. So some of the principles I'm going to be talking about are relevant and applicable to this group of people. Therefore, it's not to make you look like Hrithik Roshan or be athletic like Djokovic. It's for the common executive, self-employed, or even a professional. Now, Nandkishore mentioned this, that there is two components to overall health, which is the physical health and the mental health. And there is a strong interrelationship between the two. The physical health strongly influences your mental health, and your mental health strongly influences your physical health. So to be overall healthy and fit, you need to take care of both. I'm going to be focusing more on the physical health aspects. Mr. Nandkishore spoke a lot about the mental health aspects, particularly the stress related. And he also talked about diet and nutrition. I'll just briefly touch upon those, but I'll devote more time on exercise. The key ingredients of physical health: exercise, diet, supplements, and sleep. Now, a lot of research has shown that genes play a very important role in your overall health. But some of the latest research coming in shows that these aspects, the lifestyle, have a significant influence on your health. I was reading a Harvard medical publication recently, which said that even those who are genetically predisposed to heart disease, to diabetes, blood pressure, can significantly change, reverse most of these by exercise, diet, and lifestyle changes. So these are critical aspects of how we can look after ourselves. Let me talk about each one of these, but emphasize more on the exercise part. There are basically three, and I've broken it into four actually, four components of exercise. First is the cardiovascular fitness, which is your heart and the circulatory system. The second is your muscular part, which is broken down into endurance and strength. And finally, flexibility, your fitness of your joints, particularly how flexible you are even as you advance in age. Let me take each one of these in a bit more detail. Cardiovascular fitness. Now, please read the note in red. It's very important. Cardiovascular fitness is about making your heart stronger and fitter. Any exercise or activity that increases your heart rate is a cardiovascular exercise and is considered to be good for your heart. Exercises like brisk walking, jogging, treadmill, swimming, cycling, even stationary jogging are all good for the heart. But what we need to know is, how is this improving your condition of your heart? And at what level should you exercise? Let me ask you a question. If you walk every day for 30 minutes, is that a cardiovascular exercise? If you jog 5 miles every day, is that a cardiovascular exercise? The answer is no. The way you need a dashboard to really monitor your cardiovascular fitness, and that is your heart rate. So it's a heart rate method of monitoring your exercise level. And this is one of the key principles that Dr. Lawrence Morehouse talked about. And now most people use this, and there are one or two improvements and newer methods have come in, but for most of us, this is a very, very good method. Now, we all know that when we rest, our heart rate is around 70, 72 per minute. Now, we need to have a target heart rate at which we need to exercise. And the target heart rate is 220 minus your age times a certain percentage. Now, let's say you're a 40-year-old individual, so your target heart rate should be 180 and a certain percentage of that. Now, that percentage varies from your level of your fitness. Suppose you're a beginner and you're embarking on a fitness, cardiovascular fitness, you could be start at about 50% level. And over a period of time, as you keep doing it, you can get to 80%. I have mentioned 6 months, but don't take it as a sacrosanct. It depends on your individual body and your response. So it can be even longer, could be even a year. Ideally, you should be exercising at about 80% of your target heart rate for a period of 20 to 30 minutes whenever you're doing cardiovascular exercise. At that level, your heart is conditioned to be at peak level. So this is one of the very important points to bear in mind when you embark on a cardiovascular fitness program. There are many advanced cardiovascular fitness, and I wouldn't recommend this to anyone unless you are at a peak cardio fitness level. So I will not spend much time on this. Now let me move to muscular strength and endurance. What is muscular strength? Muscular strength is how much, for example, how much can you lift? How much weights can you lift? And endurance is how long can you hold it? How long, how many reps, how many times can you lift it? it's very important to build both muscular strength and muscular endurance. And a lot of research done shows that training your muscles, particularly the large muscles in your body, like those in your thighs and legs, in your chest, is one of the surest way to keep your metabolism at a very high level. It burns calories and really boosts up your metabolic rate. And it's a very, very important part of your fitness regime. Now, you could just work with either your weights. If you're able to go to the gym, you could work with weights at the gym, or at home, you could just work with your body weight. And there are a number of books, articles on what's called calisthenics, where you rely entirely on your body weight and progressively build your strength. Now, one key aspect I want to talk about here is the concept of progressive overload. Here again, let me ask this question. If you lift 10 pounds every day for the next 3 months, is that a good exercise for your muscles? Answer is no. Because the muscles get used to this load and that level of stress. So you need to progressively stress your muscles so that they rebuild and regenerate. So this progressive overload means if you're doing 10 pounds every day for the next, for let's say a month or so, you need to take it up to maybe 12 pounds. If you're doing 15 repetitions, you need to take it up to 20 or 18. So build it over a period of time. Of course, there is a plateau you will reach. And if you maintain at that plateau level, it's fine. As you age, at younger age groups, your body is able to cope with the additional stress. Muscles build as a result of the micro tears which happen in the muscles due to exercise. But as you age, it won't build so much. You may reach a plateau, but it's good to keep it at that plateau level. But follow this principle as much as possible of progressive overload. The third component of physical fitness is flexibility. As you embark on cardiovascular exercise, muscle training or resistance training, as it is called, it's bound to cause injuries or stress on our joints. And therefore, it's extremely important to do flexibility exercises to prevent damages to joints, muscles, and our ligaments. A good warm-up and a cool down are absolutely essential. And when you do the stretches, it could be a few asanas or basic stretches which help on the key areas of lower back, neck, shoulders, knees particularly. These are the joints which get impacted. And because we sit at our desks for 10 to 12 hours a day, working hunched over our computers, it can have a big stress on our spinal column. So one of the key things is to get up and move. So do not sit for more than an hour at your desk. If you're doing a desk job, get up after about 45 minutes to an hour, take a stroll, move your limbs, and come back and take your seat. And particularly move your arms and do a few stretches, and you can come back. That will make sure that you're flexible, but build in a flexibility program throughout your fitness regime. I've taken about 15 minutes, so I'll go a little faster. So keep in mind this acronym FITT, frequency of exercise, intensity of exercise, time, and type. So if you plan a daily program of 30 to 45 minutes for at least 5 days a week, that's exceedingly good. Do cardio for 3 days, exercise for the muscles for 2 days, and build in flexibility on all the days. And even if you're traveling, your jobs requires you to travel frequently out on work, you can do this in the place where you're staying. At the end of the day, when you come back from your work, just spend 30 minutes on this program. Do not worry too much if you miss one day, and if you can't do 5 days, you do 4 days, it's perfectly all right.
Mr. Pandit, you're on mute. You're on mute.
Maybe there is an internet problem. I think he's using his phone hotspot.
Pandit, can you unmute yourself? Can she? Yes, please. Thank you.
I got a message saying I was muted by the host. So if you want me to stop, I'll do it pretty quickly.
No, go ahead. Yeah.
Okay. So let me move a bit quickly now. I think I've taken 18 minutes, 17 minutes. So I'll go pretty fast. Now my slides are frozen. I'm unable to move my slides. There you are. So Nandu talked a lot about diet, so I will not talk much about it, but basic principle I'll mention here. As he mentioned, there are innumerable number of diets. I would avoid any of these fads. Just eat a balanced diet consisting of proteins, low glycemic index carbs, so preferably mostly monounsaturated fats, and a bit of healthy saturated fats. The most important thing is portion control. This is something, again, a key tip. Eat up to 80%. At 80%, when you feel 80% full, stop, because there is a time lag between the brain registering that you're full and you're actually being full. So please stop. And in fact, a lot of studies have been done. Longevity studies in Japan have showed, in fact, they have, I believe, a Japanese word for this, 80% is what you should eat. Supplements, if you're eating a healthy, balanced diet, avoid supplements. But if you feel you need to supplement, and most of our normal diets are not fully balanced, you may want to consider an omega-3 supplement, calcium, B complex, vitamin D, and zinc and magnesium supplements. Once again, caution, consult your doctor, and please be very careful when you supplement. Eat a balanced diet if possible, otherwise consider these. Nandu talked about sleep, so I'm not going to spend much time. It's extremely important. And the key to get good sleep is to have a routine. There should be a very regular time at which you get to bed. Let's say you get to bed at 10 o'clock at night. Every day get to bed at 10 o'clock. And if your wake up time is 6 o'clock or 5, whatever time, you wake up regularly at that time. That builds a good sleep habit. Last two slides. This is mental health, and we talked about stress, how to be cognitively fit even in your old age through learning new things. While the two other aspects I want to stress, while we have already talked about cognitive abilities and emotional fitness, spiritual pursuit and pursuing an overall broader purpose in our life, particularly once you cross 50s and nearing your retirement or crossing your retirement, these two make a huge difference to our mental health. So I think I would urge that one should think about these two aspects in addition to cognitive and emotional fitness. So let me conclude. I think I've taken about 20 minutes by saying that have a fitness goal, physical exercise, diet, supplement, sleep, and mental health. These are all key components, how to stay fit and healthy through most of your life. So thank you very much. And I will hand over back to Professor Gautam Ahuja.
Thank you, Mr. Pandit. That was an absolutely riveting story layout. I'm in the interest of time, I'm actually not going to ask any questions right now or have people ask questions. Let's actually go to the third speaker, Mr. Balraman. And sir, if you could join us and speak to your experiences, and then we'll have some questions from the audience, hopefully.
Gautam, actually, since these two people are covering a substantial portion of it, Pandit and I and Nandu, we discussed, and I said I will do a separate session for seniors, focused on them, because that would be a very different kind of session.
Okay.
As part of MMA, we also plan to do another session for women, fitness for women. So those will be coming later. I see the one input I would like to share, after which I suggest you take questions for Pandit, so that he can elaborate on what he said. You see, as Pandit hinted at it, habit formation is very important for getting into a good conditioning, whether it is physical fitness, whether it is sleep, or whether it is eating at regular times and eating to half your stomach or 3/4 of your stomach. Habit formation is very, very essential, and you just have to motivate yourself in the habit formation stage. That is one. The second is, I have found it very useful to walk 2 hours in the evening, or jog for 30 minutes. And that makes you very tired, and then you sleep I sleep every day for 8 hours, okay? And I only know that I go to sleep and when I get up. Okay, and that has been made possible. Before that, I was tossing and turning. And once I started tiring my body in the evening, sleep became very easy. Okay, so that's just a tip. It worked for me. If it works for you, okay. But it has to be a relaxed jog or relaxed walk, because if you are very tense during the jogging and walking, it may not get you sleep. Okay, yeah. Now back to Pandit.
Thank you, Mr. Balraman. Mr. Pandit, let me begin with a question for you. For those of us or those on the group that don't know Mr. Pandit, let me tell you that in all my life, I have met thousands and thousands of individuals. I have rarely met a man as disciplined as Mr. Pandit. Okay? And I know I am not that man. I am not the man who is as disciplined as Mr. Pandit. And I also know that most of the world falls into the category of people like me, okay, who fundamentally lack discipline, right? And so my question to you has to do with, how do people, all the principles you laid out are just absolutely gold, okay? And you presented them very lucidly, but do you have some hints on, or, just like Nandu presented some, how do people who don't have that discipline? Now, Nandu's idea was very, very, very strongly motivating. I think he used some beautiful illustrations to get there. And I think, what tricks would you tell us for people that, let's say I get motivated by your program today, I started. How do I stay?
That's a $1 million question. and as you correctly said, that's the most difficult thing to do as well. The key thing is the motivation has to come from 2 areas. One, as Nandu said, thinking about the fact that, think of your family and the quality time you can spend with your family, the energy you will have to be able to play with your children or grandchildren. That should be a powerful motivator for you to stay with a fitness program. The second, I would think, is to have a metric. One of the things that works for me is to have a metric for myself. So when you say heart rate monitoring, that's a metric I track. And am I going at 70% this month? Can I take it to 75%? I'm lifting 15 pounds for the last 2 months. Can I take it to 18 pounds? So that sort of keeps me motivated. It's a kind of internal motivation where I'm working towards myself. Now, I was speaking to some people who play golf, and golf for me, I don't play golf. For majority of the people who play golf, it's a passion, total passion. So I asked him, how do you get motivated to play golf? He said, I'm playing against myself. I'm not competing really with anybody else. I don't know if it's true, but this is a couple of people told me I play against myself. How to improve my strokes every time I play golf. That's a powerful motivator.
That's very useful, because what you're saying is that some of the things that are most helpful as habits that we've built up in our professional lives can actually be repurposed towards our personal lives as well. See,
Absolutely.
We know that, in organizations, we say what gets measured gets improved, and you're essentially drawing attention to that. I will pitch in here with something that I have found very useful along those lines. I had not thought of it cognitively in the way that you've done it, which is that these fitness trackers that you get actually provide an amazing amount of information that is very, very helpful. I mean, you can go to any of the providers. I suspect that they're all very, very, very close to each other. I use the iPhone and the Apple Watch, but there are many, many others that are all equally good. And a thing that kind of is useful, let me also share that with you. I actually teach a class on healthcare strategy, and I therefore engage with doctors as kind of part of my professional setup. And to be prepared for them, whenever I spend any time with a doctor, I kind of try to probe, because that's my audience in a sense. I have to speak to those people. And one of the interesting things I find is that increasingly, people are describing a kind of experience which I think is very important, which is something you can do straight away, is they get these fitness trackers and then they track their performance and then they take it to their doctor. And the doctors tell me they truly value that, because they have changed, regimes and regimen for people, or this is very valuable input to them. And because these trackers are actually at the point in their technological development where they can actually give you very, very real information. So in addition to providing a metric for yourself to improve on, it also provides information for your doctor to give you advice, but your doctor will not come to you. You have to collect the data and review it and then take it there. Don't just buy a tracker and then, it sits on your wrist and you feel good. No, use the trackers, because they have a lot of facilities, a lot of things that would otherwise have been very complicated in an earlier life for us, which they are able to provide. So I think that is one thing I would encourage everybody to do. The second thing I would like to draw your attention to something that Mr. Pandit said earlier, which is very, very important. Notice that when he said, you have to reach a target heart rate, he was very careful and he specified that there is a variable percentage, and he used the letter of the alphabet X for it, as we always represent variables. And that X varies, and it varies over time. What you want to keep in mind is that, as he indicated, that THR is actually likely to vary by your own physical condition. So for some people, the 220 minus age, because very often people will say, 220 minus age, and they'll remember that part. Okay. And then I'll say, I'll go from 50 to 80. But don't forget that he used the term X for a very specific reason, which is that can vary for individuals depending upon their health condition. So you could be 40 and it may actually be way, way lower than what the formula tells you. And you could be 60 and you could be going up to a higher level. That is something that you must absolutely, make sure that your doctor has some sense of cardiovascular fitness, and they can actually estimate for you. Because one common problem in India is cardiovascular issues occur early in life, much earlier than they do elsewhere. So the typical Indian 50-year-old already has very likely some issues, at least for a large proportion of the population. And therefore, it's kind of important to have that, that metric straight, because you don't want to make a mistake on that. Don't just remember the 220 minus 180, the easy part of the formula. Remember Mr. Pandit's X. That's the part I would.
Very important point. Thanks for highlighting it. Very good point.
Yeah, and so folks, I am still looking to see if there are some general questions we can address. I see a lot of specific questions, but I don't think we're in a position to say whether one food or diet is better than the other. I think the point here was that it has to be tailored to who you are. Related to Mr. Pandit's comments earlier, again, I want to draw out an implication, which is that to stay on something, you have to find a routine that works for you, right? Because he gave you all these components, but if you say, well, I'm going to start swimming, and that doesn't become a natural part of your routine, you will do it for a month, and then you will sort of give up on it because it required you to do something that you were not willing to do on a routinized basis. So I think both, all of the three speakers have talked about the importance of routine here. So what you need to do is find something that works for you. And I think that's another, at least important lesson I took away from Mr. Pandit's discussion here. So any thoughts or feedback on these ideas of the importance of what's a routine and how do you come up with a good routine for yourself?
I just want to add one thing about the heart rate monitoring. Even if you don't have any kind of gadget, these days, in fact, group captain was telling me that Apple Watch gives you VOX max, measures your heart rate through another method. And it's all Professor Lawrence Morehouse, the good teacher in 1976, says in his book is just stop whatever you're doing, stand, count your pulse for 15 seconds, multiply that by 4, that's your heart rate. So you don't need fancy, if you have, fantastic, but if you don't have, let that not deter you from monitoring your heart rate. And today, if you're going to a gym, most of the equipment have heart rate monitors.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I have a point.
Nandu, would you like to add something to how we would, any of the things to preserve a routine that you've built? And I'll come back to Mr. Pandit for that as well.
Who are you talking to?
I said either Nandu or Mr. Pandit or Mr. Balaram, anybody. How do you preserve a routine that you have started? Yeah.
I would leave it to Nandu and Pandit. I was going to say something else, which is...
Sure, go ahead, please.
Nandu mentioned the important point about hydration, and he said that we are chronically dehydrated. In my experience, it's very, very important to be fully hydrated in order for the heart rate to quickly revert to normal. I mean, when you start exercising, within 5 minutes, your heart rate should come back to its basal rate of 72 per minute. And it's very, very important to be hydrated. Otherwise, your heart rate will stay elevated.
So that's very important. And folks, a very basic way that you should be, and I know this is a little gross, but it's very, very important. And I have, people here who might know better than me, but my understanding is you don't have to have deep measurements of dehydration. Anytime you are going to the toilet, if you are, if your urine is more than even slightly pale yellow, it means you haven't drunk enough water right then. That's a reminder to you right there. You should be you should be drinking water, more water at that point itself. So I think that's very important. If I'm wrong, please do correct me on that. But that's the general indicator that I think I'm using here. That's very, very important. Yeah. Okay. And I cannot emphasize enough, based on whatever I've read also, that dehydration is bad. So you need to me, and it's the easiest of things to fix. Okay? There's one other question that I wanted to throw out for all of us in this this thing. See, people differ in their ability to have access to situations where they can control their exercise very regularly, right? For instance, now it's been imposed on all of us. Most of us don't have gyms in our home, and you can't go to the gym outside because of COVID. But that's a problem for many people. They live either further away from things. So what advice would you have with respect to, the typical Indian sort of transportation and living environment, what are some of the things that people can do that are very low-hanging fruit to improve their health? What I've heard is that any exercise is good, right? So just doing walking every day, getting up a few times is useful. So that's one thing we want to do. But what are some other things that you might suggest? And I'll open it up to any of you three. Yeah. Yes, Nandu, please.
First, as a slightly humorous tip, if Rahul Gandhi can do push-ups, all of us can do push-ups, right? You've seen his Twitter feed where he's doing push-ups with one hand. That was seriously impressive for me. So that was on a lighter note. But otherwise, listen, Mr. Pandit referred to it. Walking, running, body weight exercises, yoga, all of this is available to us. It's a question of choosing to do it. You choose to do it, you will find it. Mr. Pandit?
In fact, again, I'll go back to my good old book, Professor Lawrence Morehouse. He is, in his book, outlined a fitness regime for 7 minutes, all of which you can do at home. He talks about jogging on the spot to raise your heart rate, doing push-ups progressively. First start with the wall, then progressively will go down, incline. It can take you for days and months. You can keep your fitness levels through just these. So you don't need fancy equipment. You don't need fancy gyms.
I have an input. If you have a carpet of 4 feet by 6 feet, all that you can do Surya Namaskar. If you do 36 Surya Namaskar, you will never have a lower back issue. And 36 Surya Namaskars is both yoga and cardiovascular exercise. You burn calories as well. You will your body will become warm. You will sweat. So there is nothing to beat Surya Namaskar as for cardiovascular fitness. And also,
even I'm not a yoga, I'm not studied yoga, but I've heard people say that if you do Bhasrika or Kapalbhati, you can raise your heart rate.
Very true. No, not only that, it actually increases the oxygen level of your blood. Nowadays you check with your pulse oximeter. If you do Bhastrika and then check your blood oxygen level, it will be 98 or 99.
Thank you very much for those. One last observation before we're running out of time. One thing I will emphasize is that given India's environmental reality, one of the things that I have looked at is the effect of air quality on health. And it turns out that if you live in India, pretty much, this is a broad brush characterization, but pretty much true for most parts, between Chennai and Chandigarh, that's the zone, it's almost a given that your air quality is actually nowhere near what it should be. And in fact, the PM 2.5 pollution that we look at has dramatic and disastrous health effects. Okay, so, and the point is, it's one of those things that, you want to minimize your exposure to the extent possible. So it's a very cheap fix, but a very important one. Make sure that you are getting HEPA air purifiers. And so there are 2 or 3 things there. A HEPA air purifier that you run continuously till, it has a continuous setting. So when the air is pure enough, it shuts off. The other part is get an app. Suffer is the app I use when I'm in India, but there are other apps available, I'm sure, which give you the air quality index for that day. And remember, though it may be set as 50 or above is on PM 2.5 is bad, but that actually is way above the World Health Organization standards, which are 25. So it turns out that the PM 2.5 is actually creating or opening up a wide variety of inflammatory processes in the body. And already Indians have a problem with cardiovascular disease, and this can be very, very dangerous. So what I'm saying is almost everybody that you know is living with this hazard, which is invisible, but make sure you're getting it and bringing it over. And one very practical tip. When I travel in India, I have made it a practice that I ask the hotels to bring an air purifier for me. The fascinating thing is that the number of times I have asked for the air purifier, I have received it, and I didn't realize it the first time it happened. I open it to check whether the filter has even been opened. And I find that's not the case, not with some of my friends' homes and with some of the others. So there's just a plastic bag around the filter, which you're supposed to open, and people don't do it. They put it to their staff, domestic staff, to do it. And they're not as, they just start the thing and that's the end of the story. So one of the things is make sure that the filter is clean. Well, I opened it to check that it was clean and found that it was really clean because it had not even been unpacked. So I've just been breathing a fan. So through a fan. So that's one of the things. But believe me, that one thing alone will have public health consequences for India over the next 20 years, and fix that today. I think we'll stop here and I will go back to Group Captain in a moment. But thank you so much to all our panelists for a fantastic session. I just wish this session was a lot longer because I was both inspired and informed. And I hope, that would be useful for you. A quick slide that I will put up, which is essentially just a summary of some of the main things that we talked about, or, takeaways that we came up with. I can in no way summarize everything that was done, but very quickly, most important messages at a meta level. Take charge of your own health. That's not somebody else's responsibility, it's your own. And I think all three speakers have highlighted that. The second part is you can do it. There were issues that, as all three of them said, most of what you can do requires a 6 feet by 6 feet space and attitude. That's it. Find a diet, exercise, and stress reduction that works for you. Very important, as we've said several times. We are not doctors. Speak to the right people to make sure it's okay. Build the routine into your life. Make your habits work for you. And remember that all three components are important parts of this process. It's not just diet or exercise or stress management. It's all of them, and especially it includes sleeping as well. And don't fall into the trap of, I don't need the sleep. Believe me, the statistics tell us you do need 7 to 9 hours. And if you think you don't, you are a very, very rare exception. And it simply does not account for the number of people in the corporate world that think that they're that exception. The data do not support it at all. Okay, so I'll pass it on to Group Captain Vijay Kumar and thank all the participants who dialed in, as well as all the speakers. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor. Thank you so much. Great evening. I can tell you this is the 31st in the series. I consider this one of the best series what we had, because so much of insight. We have over 800 viewers watching this program live, and the number of questions have come. Most of the questions thing. I think one question which many people asked is, what about oral dental hygiene? Actually, maybe next time we can cover that as a token of our appreciation, because that gentleman says dental thing causes so many other ailments, and how you are taking care of dental hygiene. Maybe next time we should cover that.
Point, yeah.
As a token of our appreciation, we would like to present, as usual, this is the COVID time, and we'll present the mask till the vaccine is there. The vaccine is already there, but even if you take a vaccine, we advise you must continue to follow all the social distance protocol, including wearing the mask till the total thing is eradicated. Thanks so much, each one of you. Your feedback is very, very important. As mentioned, the caution which have been told by the speakers, please do follow them. Thanks so much. And now I request Mr. Balraman for his final comments. Over to you, Mr. Balraman.
Well, all that I can say is that it was a very, very high value session, full of knowledge and information, based on wide reading, based on wide experimenting and practice. And this is just the very first of several sessions that we need to have, is what I realized. And if there are people in the audience who want to exchange information, we can arrange roundtables, so that those who are into fitness and health can exchange knowledge, exchange practices, exchange experience. And as I said earlier, we will do a separate session for the women in our Women Business Forum. And I plan to do one for senior citizens, sharing my experience. So thank you very much. Most well done, Gautam. Most well done, Nandu and Pandit. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Stay safe, stay healthy.
Good evening. Good
Great
night.
tips. And if you're not start playing golf, start playing golf. That's the only game you can play against yourself. It's a fascinating game. I can assure you that, actually. Yes.
Right. Thank you all.
Thank you. Bye.